They say the moon remembers. Every howl, every drop of blood, every forbidden kiss. And on nights like this, when the Alpha rises to claim his throne, the moon reveals the sins that were never buried. But not all ghosts stay silent, and not all love stories end with death. The story begins on a night wrapped in silver light. The forest is alive with the howls of 100 wolves, the drums of celebration echoing across the valley. The new Alpha has risen, tall, commanding, eyes that burn like fire in the darkness. He is a king in every sense of the word, feared by rivals, obeyed by all. Yet, while the pack bows, while voices chant his name, there is something else in the air, a chill, sharp as a blade, a whisper that does not belong to the living. For though the Alpha wears the crown tonight, another presence lingers at his side, unseen, restless, watching. Years ago, long before this night of glory, a tragedy stained these woods. A forbidden love, tender, desperate, fragile, was shattered beneath the very same moon. A young she-wolf, silenced too soon, her death cloaked in secrecy, her memory buried in whispers, but the soul of the betrayed never found peace. And tonight, as the Alpha steps into his destiny, her spirit stirs. She does not come as a shadow of grief alone, no, she comes with fury, with longing, with a love so strong it defied the grave. The Alpha feels it first as a breath on his neck, though no one stands behind him. Then a fragrance, faint but impossible to forget, lavender tinged with iron, the scent of her. His chest tightens. His gaze shifts toward the tree line, where the moonlight weaves strange shapes between the branches. But there is nothing there, nothing, except the prickling certainty that he is not alone. Before we continue, if this story has already gripped you, if you can feel the tension in the air and want to uncover the truth of this haunted love, make sure you subscribe right now, because what comes next will change everything you think you know about fate, love, and death. And tell us where you are watching from. The celebration presses on, the pack oblivious to the storm that brews beneath their Alpha's calm exterior. He raises his goblet to the sky, but his hands tremble. A flicker passes through the flames of the ceremonial torches, shadows twisting into shapes that seem almost human, almost hers. And then, as the howls of allegiance ring out, he hears it, her voice, soft, trembling, accusing. "Why did you let me die?" The Alpha freezes. His heart roars louder than the crowd. No one else reacts, no one else hears. Only him. He turns sharply, his eyes scanning the faces of his warriors, his people, his kin. But no lips move. No eyes meet his with accusation. Only the crackling fire and the wild symphony of wolves. And yet again her whisper drifts through him, laced with grief and fury. "I was yours. I am still yours." The Alpha's blood runs cold. He clenches his jaw, commanding himself to remain composed. A leader shows no weakness, not even to the dead. But deep inside, he knows. This is no madness. This is no dream. Something, someone, is haunting him, and she is not here to let go. As the moon reaches its peak, the wind tears through the clearing, extinguishing half the torches at once. Gasps ripple through the pack. The Alpha locks his gaze on the darkness beyond the firelight. And there she stands. For a fleeting heartbeat, the crowd sees nothing, but the Alpha does. Her form, pale and luminous, staring at him with eyes full of sorrow and wrath. The night of his triumph has become the night of her return. The celebration had ended in uneasy silence. The pack went home whispering of omens and ill winds, their joy smothered by the strange extinguishing of the torches. But for the Alpha, the night had only just begun. For when the fires were rekindled and the songs finally died down, he carried her image in his mind. The pale outline of the woman who should have been lost to the grave. Her gaze had pierced him like a spear, both tender and accusing, as if her soul had been waiting all this time just to find him again. And so, when the Alpha lay in his bed that night, on silken sheets that felt colder than ice, the memory did not fade. He dreamed. At first it was simple. a meadow of silver grass under a swollen moon, the kind of dream that felt too sharp, too clear, to be only imagination. He stood alone in the clearing, the night alive with the hum of unseen creatures. And then, at the edge of the moonlight, she appeared, a woman draped in shadows, her face half hidden, her eyes burning with sorrow. She did not speak, but her gaze said everything: accusation, longing, a love that had curdled into torment. The Alpha reached for her, his chest aching with a pain he could not name, but the moment his hand drew near, she dissolved into mist, scattering on the night wind like dust. He woke with a start, drenched in sweat though his chamber was cold. His heartbeat thundered against his ribs. The sheets beneath him were icy, as though someone had been lying beside him moments before, and then slipped away. From the shadows of the room, something shifted. A flicker of movement, there and then gone. He rose, his claws itching to unsheathe, his instincts screaming danger. "Show yourself," he growled into the silence. But the only answer was the faintest trace of lavender in the air, mixed with something darker, metallic, sharp, blood. The nights that followed were no different. Every time his eyes closed, he dreamed of her. Sometimes she stood in the tree line, watching. Sometimes she whispered his name, her voice breaking, fragile as glass. Other times, she wept. The sound twisted his soul more than any enemy's blade could, and when he woke, his bed was always cold, as if she had lain with him in silence before slipping back into the shadows. The pack began to notice. Their Alpha, once unshakable, now looked haunted. His gaze wandered when he should have commanded. His eyes were lined with sleeplessness. His temper, always sharp, flared with violence at the smallest provocation. Whispers grew among the wolves. "He's cursed. The dead have claimed him. The Alpha is losing his mind." But he could not confess the truth. An Alpha does not bend beneath weakness, not before his warriors. Still, in the silence of the night, when even the wind dared not stir, he knew. This was not madness. It was her. One evening, desperate for clarity, he walked the torchlit halls of his castle. His footsteps echoed against stone, steady and strong, though his heart carried the weight of dread. The fires flickered strangely, shadows bending into forms that were not their own. And then he heard it, soft, deliberate, unmistakable. Footsteps. He turned sharply. The corridor was empty. The flames stretched long, bending unnaturally as though bowing toward some unseen presence. A whisper cut through the silence, brushing against his ear like breath. "You cannot run from me." The Alpha spun, his claws unsheathing with a metallic scrape. His chest rose and fell like a storm. "Enough!" he snarled into the void. "If you are spirit, if you are flesh, show yourself to me." For a long moment, nothing. Only the hollow thrum of his own heartbeat filling the silence. And then she appeared, not as mist, not as shadow, but standing, clear as the day he lost her. Pale skin glowing in the moonlight streaming through the high windows, eyes deep as the forest night, her gown torn and blood-stained as it had been when last he saw her. She looked at him as though he were both her salvation and her damnation. The Alpha's breath caught. Rage, grief, and longing warred inside him. "You," he whispered, voice breaking. "Why are you here?" Her lips parted, trembling. For the first time since her death, the ghost spoke in full. "Because death could not silence me, because love could not free me, because you, Alpha, you are the reason I cannot rest." The torches sputtered violently, and the chamber plunged into near darkness. Her figure flickered, caught between presence and absence, flesh and spirit. And then, with eyes burning like two endless moons, she stepped closer, whispering a single truth that sent the Alpha's world crashing down. "You were always mine, and I was always yours, until they tore us apart." The Alpha's hands trembled, not with fear but with the weight of a love resurrected and a betrayal unburied. The haunting had only just begun. The Alpha's world had tilted that night. Her words still rang in his chest like a curse etched in fire. You were always mine, and I was always yours, until they tore us apart. Sleep abandoned him entirely. Each time he closed his eyes, her voice threaded into his dreams, her image hovering like a brand upon his soul. By dawn, his strength wavered. An alpha could endure pain, war, even betrayal, but the weight of a spirit's touch was heavier than any blade. The pack noticed his decline. His warriors kept their distance, whispering behind clenched jaws. The elders spoke in hushed tones, their fear growing that their alpha was unraveling before their very eyes. Wolves did not fear battle, but they feared the unseen, what claws could not slash and what fangs could not tear. And so, the whispers grew until they reached the ears of the one woman brave enough to face the storm within the alpha's halls, the pack's healer. She came to him under the guise of duty, bearing herbs and bowls of steaming tonic, her wrinkled hands steady as stone. But her eyes, sharp as hawks, pierced straight through the mask he tried to wear. "You are not cursed," she said quietly, as though stating a truth the walls themselves already knew. "You are haunted." The alpha's jaw tightened. "I do not believe in childish tales." Her smile was bitter. "You believe in spirits when you feel their breath on your neck. You believe when you hear them whisper your name in the silence of night. You believe when the scent of lavender and blood follows you into every chamber you walk." His chest constricted. She had spoken it perfectly. The signs, the torment, the very noose around his soul. His pride demanded denial, but his heart already knew she was right. "She lingers," the healer continued, her voice low, careful. "Not as a curse, but as a bond, stronger than death, stronger than time. Such bonds cannot be broken by force, only by truth." That night, the alpha could not resist. He sought her. The castle lay in silence, its halls stretched with shadows, torches sputtering as if reluctant to burn in her presence. He followed the pull in his chest, the strange tug that led him to the great hall, where moonlight spilled in wide rivers through the glass windows. And there she was, not half-formed, not flickering, but standing tall, her gown still torn and blood-streaked, her hair cascading in waves as black as the night sky. Her eyes shimmered with 1,000 unshed tears, yet hardened with fury. The alpha froze. His heart pounded like war drums. Rage and longing twisted within him, a storm he could no longer contain. "You haunt me," he growled, his voice breaking between command and confession. "Why? Why will you not let me go?" Her lips trembled. Then her voice spilled out, fragile and sharp all at once. "Because you let me die." The words cut deeper than any blade. The alpha's hands curled into fists. "No," he snarled, shaking his head. "I fought for you. I would have bled for you." Her eyes burned with grief. "But you were not there. You promised without words. You looked at me as though I was yours, as though fate itself had bound us. And yet, when the blood was spilled, I was left alone. I screamed for you, and you never came." He staggered back, her accusation crashing against the fortress of his pride. He remembered the night, the chaos, the betrayal that stole her from him. He remembered his own helplessness, the chains of responsibility that had bound him elsewhere. But in her eyes excuses held no weight. "Do you know what it is?" she whispered, stepping closer. "To die with your mate's name on your lips, to feel your soul torn from your flesh, yet tethered by a bond unbroken." Her tears shimmered in the moonlight, but her voice was laced with venom. "I am bound to you because you bound me, and I will not rest until you face what was done to me." The alpha's chest heaved, torn between fury and despair. "Then tell me, show me the truth. Who spilled your blood?" Her expression shifted, anguish softening the fury. For a moment, her ghostly hand reached for his cheek, stopping inches away, trembling as though the barrier between them mocked her. "You already know," she said softly. "Search your heart. The answers lie there." The hall grew colder. The torches hissed as though drowning in unseen water. The alpha's breath clouded before him. He was no longer in control. This was her realm now, and he was but a wolf trapped in her cage of grief and love. Her form flickered, her voice grew distant, yet her eyes never left his. I loved you beyond life itself, and I hate you, because that love was not enough to save me. The last torch sputtered out, darkness swallowed the hall, and with it, her figure vanished, leaving only the echo of her final words. The Alpha stood alone, his fists trembling, his breath ragged, haunted not only by her presence but by the unbearable truth that somewhere in his soul he already knew who had betrayed them. And for the first time, the mighty Alpha felt fear, not of spirits, but of the secrets buried within his own pack. The great hall lay in silence, but the Alpha's mind roared like a storm. Her voice, her accusations, echoed still. You already know. Search your heart. The answers lie there. His fists trembled at his sides. He could not accept it. Yet denial crumbled in the shadow of truth. The spirit had not returned to torment him without reason. There was blood on his pack's hands, blood that had stolen not just a life, but a future. His future. For days, the Alpha found no rest. By day he wore his mask of command, issuing orders, standing tall before his warriors. But behind closed doors, he unraveled. His dreams grew sharper, his visions clearer. The ghost did not leave him. She lingered, guiding him, pulling him toward memories he had tried to bury. One night, when the moon rose full and swollen, she appeared again, this time not in rage but in quiet sorrow. Her pale form hovered in the corner of his chamber, her eyes filled with longing. You were mine, she whispered, her voice trembling. From the moment we first met, the bond was sealed. You did not know it then, but fate had already written our names together. The Alpha's chest tightened. Mate. The word left his lips like a broken prayer. Yes, she answered, her lips curving in a sad smile. I was bound to you, and you to me. Yet they stole me before you ever claimed me. Her gaze sharpened. And they made you believe it was fate that took me away. The Alpha's claws dug into the arms of his chair. The truth settled heavy in his bones. She had not been simply a woman of his pack. She had been his mate, a truth hidden, a bond severed by treachery. Who? He demanded, his voice cracking like thunder. Who betrayed us? The spirit's eyes flickered, shadows dancing across her face. You must see it yourself. I can guide you, but the betrayal is written in your blood, in the wolves who swear loyalty with their tongues but not their hearts. The days that followed became a hunt for answers. The Alpha prowled the halls of his keep like a restless beast, his gaze lingering too long on his closest warriors. He dug into records, questioned the elders, and revisited the places of her memory. And always, she was there. When he passed the meadow where they once walked in secret, her ghost stood in the distance, watching him with eyes that begged and condemned all at once. When he entered the training grounds, he smelled her scent lingering, as if her blood had seeped into the very soil. The more he sought, the clearer the picture became. Her death had not been the accident the pack had whispered of. No wild beast, no random misfortune. It had been orchestrated, and the hand that struck her down had been guided by someone within his own pack. The revelation shattered him. Rage boiled in his veins, but grief drowned it just as quickly. To think, his own people, wolves sworn to protect their kin, had slaughtered the very mate the moon had chosen for him. One night, when he could no longer bear the silence, he confronted her apparition again. She appeared in the courtyard, bathed in moonlight, her torn gown swaying in the night wind. Why did you not tell me then? He demanded, his voice raw. Why did you suffer in silence while enemies circled us? Her eyes filled with tears, glistening as though the moon itself wept through her. Because I believed you would come, she whispered, because I trusted the bond. Even as I bled, even as their claws tore into me, I called for you. I waited for you. Her voice broke, and with it, so did he. But you never came. The Alpha fell to his knees, the weight of guilt dragging him down. His claws raked the stone beneath him as his breath came ragged. "I would have torn the world apart to save you," he swore, his voice trembling. "If I had known, if I had seen—" Her hand lifted, ghostly, trembling, reaching toward him. For a fleeting moment he felt it, cold, faint, but real, brush against his cheek. "It was not fate that kept you away," she murmured. "It was betrayal. They feared what we would become together. They feared the strength of our bond, and so they broke it before it could bloom." The Alpha's mind churned. Who among his wolves had feared him so greatly that they would strike down his mate? Who had the power to hide such treachery beneath years of silence? The healer's words returned to him. Such bonds cannot be broken by force, only by truth. If he wanted justice for her, he would have to tear open the wounds of the past and bleed the truth from those who had buried it. The spirit's eyes glowed faintly, her voice heavy with urgency as she leaned close. "Look to those closest to you, Alpha. The betrayal is not distant. It was not a stranger's hand that stole me. It was the hand of one who feasts at your table still." The Alpha's heart thundered. His most trusted, his counsel, his own blood. The shadows deepened around him, the torches guttering out one by one until only her pale light remained. And in the silence her final words for the night echoed, "Your throne is built upon my grave. Now choose, rule the living, or give justice to the dead." The Alpha's nights no longer brought him peace. They brought her. Her presence clung to him like breath on cold glass, her voice a constant whisper, threading through the silence. The spirit who once accused him now lingered in every shadow, in every flicker of firelight, in every stolen heartbeat. And though she was not flesh, his soul recognized her as his mate. When he stood on the battlements, staring at the forest beyond, he felt her arms in the wind wrapping around him. When he paced the throne room, heavy with anger and doubt, he heard her footsteps echo beside his own. When he closed his eyes, he swore he felt her lips brush his cheek, light as air, cold as mist, but powerful enough to set his heart ablaze. The bond was alive, stronger than death. And though the Alpha tried to bury the truth behind his iron mask, the pack had begun to see it. Whispers ran through the wolves like wildfire. Our Alpha speaks to shadows. He walks with a ghost. His mate is not of the living. Some spoke with fear, others with disgust, but all spoke with doubt. Could a leader bound to the dead still rule the living? The Alpha heard their murmurs, but he did not bend. He carried her in his soul, and no shame, no whispered curse could strip that bond from him. Yet with each passing night, the tension grew. And then came the storm. It began with the howls of rival wolves, sharp and furious, echoing through the forest like drums of war. The Alpha's enemies had scented weakness. They had seen the shadows circling his pack, the unrest in his halls, the doubt in his warriors' eyes. And wolves, hungry for power, struck when they smelled blood. The attack came swift and merciless, an army of snarling muzzles and flashing claws tearing into his territory. Fire lit the edges of the forest, torches wielded by those who sought to burn his legacy down. The Alpha charged into battle, his roar shaking the very trees. He was fury embodied, claws cutting through flesh, fangs ripping through bone. But though his strength was great, the numbers of his enemies swelled greater still. For the first time in years, the Alpha felt the cold hand of doubt grip his heart. And then she came. Not as a whisper, not as a shadow, but as a storm of light and rage. Her spirit descended upon the battlefield, her torn gown flowing like a banner of vengeance. Wolves froze mid-strike, their eyes widening with primal terror at the sight of her glowing form. Her voice thundered across the clearing, a harmony of grief and wrath. "You will not touch him." The air trembled, the flames bent. The earth itself seemed to pulse beneath her command. The Alpha stumbled, his breath ragged, blood dripping from his claws. But when he looked up and saw her standing between him and death itself, his heart clenched with something far beyond fear. She lifted her hand, and a wave of cold fire erupted, slamming into their enemies. Wolves howled in agony as their strength withered, their bodies crumpling as though their very spirits had been torn away. The pack watched in stunned silence as the ghost of their alpha's mate, long thought lost, long buried in whispers, shielded him with power no mortal could wield. The alpha rose to his feet, his eyes locked on her luminous form. "You protect me," he whispered, awe breaking through his voice. Her gaze softened, sorrow mixing with love. "I always have, even in death." He stepped closer, his hand trembling as it hovered inches from her glowing cheek. "You are more than a memory. You are mine. Always mine." The pack gasped at his words, for though they had long doubted, they could no longer deny the truth. Their alpha's bond defied the grave itself. But power, even born of love, came at a cost. As the last rival wolves fled into the darkness, broken and terrified, her form flickered. Her strength wavered, her light dimming like a candle in the wind. "No," the alpha growled, his claws reaching for her fading figure. "Stay with me." Her eyes glistened with grief. "The bond gives me strength, but every time I wield it, I lose a part of myself. If I keep this path, I will burn away." The alpha's chest tightened, his heart raged with helplessness. To see her, his mate, his love, sacrifice herself for him even in death was agony beyond endurance. She reached for him, her ghostly fingers brushing against his chest where his heartbeat thundered. "Choose wisely, Alpha," she whispered, her voice fading. "Will you fight for me, or let me go?" And with that she vanished, leaving the battlefield drenched in silence, the pack staring at their shaken leader, and the Alpha himself torn between the throne he ruled and the love that refused to die. The battlefield lay silent, littered with ash and blood, but the Alpha felt nothing but the emptiness in his chest. She was gone. Her voice, her light, her touch vanished into the night like mist retreating before the dawn, but her words remained, carved into his heart like an unhealed wound. "Choose wisely, Alpha. Will you fight for me or let me go?" For days he could not sleep. He could not eat. His wolves brought him news, petitions, warnings of rival packs regrouping, but his mind wandered only to her. His restless nights grew darker, haunted not by her presence but by her absence. And then came the omen, a blood moon rising red against the sky, its glow drenching the forest in crimson. The elders whispered of it as a curse, but the old healer came forward with a truth darker still. "There is a way," the healer rasped, her eyes cloudy with age but sharp with knowledge. "A ritual under the blood moon. It can sever the bond or set her free. But it comes with a price." The Alpha's jaw tightened. "What price?" The healer's gaze did not falter. "Your life, perhaps, or worse. If you fail, the spirit will shatter, gone forever. If you succeed—" She paused, her voice trembling. "You may never walk this world the same again." That night, beneath the blood moon's shadow, the Alpha climbed to the ancient altar carved into the cliffs. Wolves followed him at a distance, their eyes filled with dread and doubt. Their leader, powerful, unyielding, now stood trembling before an impossible choice. The winds howled, and the air turned thick with the scent of iron. As he drew the sacred blade across his palm, crimson droplets fell onto the stone, glowing in the moon's light. And then she appeared. Her form shimmered before him, fragile, translucent, as though the very air might scatter her away. "You should not have come," she whispered, sorrow etching her voice. "The ritual will consume you." "I would burn the world to hold you," he growled, his voice breaking. "I will not lose you again." Her eyes, haunted and tender, searched his face. "And if freeing me means losing me, would you still choose it?" The ritual began. Chants echoed from the healer's lips. Flames burst around the altar, circling them both in fire and shadow. The Alpha's blood dripped steadily, binding his soul to the spell. The spirit cried out, her form flickering between presence and absence, torn by the magic pulling at her very being. He reached for her, his claws scraping against the air, desperate to anchor her to him. "Stay. Stay with me." Her voice trembled, If I stay, you will never know peace. If I go, you will never know love again. The blood moon thundered above them, the ground splitting with violent tremors. The ritual demanded an answer, a choice. At last, he made it. The Alpha seized her trembling, ghostly hands, pressing them against his heart. His voice was raw, filled with both anguish and devotion. Then let the gods hear me. I choose love. I choose you. I will not let the grave decide my fate. The flames roared higher, devouring the altar in a storm of light. The pack gasped as the Alpha's body convulsed, the ritual tearing at his soul. His blood spilled across the stone, binding his spirit with hers in a torrent of power. The spirit screamed, torn between worlds, "You fool, this will destroy you!" But he only pulled her closer, his lips brushing her ghostly forehead. "Then let us be destroyed together." And then, silence. The fire collapsed into embers. The blood moon pulsed once, twice, and then faded back into silver. From the ashes of the altar, two figures rose. Not one. Two. The Alpha, his chest heaving, his body trembling, and beside him, her. No longer a wraith, no longer a whisper, but flesh, blood, and breath. Her hand slipped into his, warm, alive, trembling. Gasps rippled through the wolves. The impossible had happened. The line between life and death had shattered. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. You brought me back." His hand tightened around hers, his voice breaking into a smile for the first time in years. "No, my love. We brought each other back." And in that moment the pack, once doubtful, once afraid, bowed their heads, not out of fear, not out of duty, but out of reverence. For their Alpha had done what no wolf before him ever dared. He had chosen love over power, devotion over duty, and won. Under the silver glow of the healed moon, the Alpha pulled her close. Their lips met, no longer cold, no longer distant, but real. A kiss that sealed not only their bond, but their legacy. For theirs was a love that had defied death itself, and it would be told for generations, a legend of the Alpha who chose his heart, and the mate who returned from the grave to claim it. Don't forget to like, comment where you're watching from, and share. See you tomorrow.